All right, everybody, we are back. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man. I have Coach Dustin, Coach Brad here. Boy, are these guys primed tonight. They've been putting so much thought and effort all day. I cannot wait to hear what these guys have to say tonight on tonight's topic. It's going to be fucking phenomenal. I bet I barely say 10 words, right? All right, let's go. That'd be a minor miracle, but these guys came in fired up. Okay, so here we're going to do. Tonight, I titled this, You Got a Fight Coming. Okay, so simple enough. Listen, I could go on, have a big-winded explanation. I'm going to cut straight back, and Brad's going to take it away. He's going to set up the whole night for us. Stick with us back in about outside his life, his family, and his property. I'm Greg LaBeouf. Welcome to the Education of a Weapon. Keep shutting down here. All right, everybody. Sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty with the stream. Seems to keep kicking out here. I may have to restart it, but we'll give it a shot here and see how far we get into this. Okay, so tonight's podcast, I titled it, You've Got a Fight Coming. It's a really, really simple concept. I will set it up. I will start off with a few words and then kick it to these guys. But this one's really, really basic. And the concept is very simple. You've got a fight coming, meaning that it's a couple layers to this. But one, as we take on more and more new members over the last a couple months here, it has become very clear to me that men today, they see we're at a tipping point is probably the best way that I could describe this. And I think that the tipping point really is that more and more people are having a growing uncertainty about what the future is to bring. Now, I think obviously no one has a crystal ball, and so nobody at any point in time in human history has been able to predict, coming events or the future. But there is something that's called an event horizon. And the event horizon is a pretty simple concept, but it is, if you are actually looking around at what is happening, so you just think of, life as a global chessboard, so to speak, or even in your own city, your own community, province, state, whatever it is, wherever you happen to be listening, you're seeing the pawns move on the board. You're seeing trends. You're seeing changes in mindset. You're seeing changes in culture. You're seeing, you're just seeing life. This is what life is. This has been life throughout history. But if you're watching things unfold and you start to develop an educated eye for things, you start to be able to go into the future, at least within a certain amount of reasonable time, into the future and predict and fairly accurately coming events. And so I thought this was a pretty interesting concept to what if, there's two things here. I could say it as a what if question. What if you've got a fight coming? And now it is up to the listener or the viewer to interpret that. What if you got a fight coming? I don't know what level that resonates with you. What if it is a collapse of our economy? What if it is just a breakdown in the fiber of a community, or how our infrastructure, or the breakdown and collapse of the justice system, breakdowns and collapses in law enforcement, or medical care, whatever it is. If your brain looks forward and says, what are some, not just, anything is possible, but what are some genuinely probable situations where I go, I might have a fucking fight coming here? And if that arrives, all hell breaks loose. What do you do at that point? And again, I'm just going to kind of ground it in the slant that we would take it in. And, for me, no matter what way your brain goes, in any type of crisis, protection becomes paramount. And that's just, being able to protect what you have, protect what you provide, being able to protect your health, being able to protect reason, whatever it is, just being able to protect. And so this whole idea of you got a fight coming, and as I related it to a tipping point, it's interesting if we just start with a very general overview of this. What is most people's tipping point? Is it before something happens, when something happens, or after it's already happening? Right? What is the tipping point for a lot of people, and why? And I think we'll just throw that question out, very, very simple, very basic. But I'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts are on what you believe, just the whole thing, you got a fight coming, and then the idea of the tipping point before, during, or once it's already happening.
Yeah, I think without having a lot of time to put, deep thought into that, my
Of course.
visceral response. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I mean, a
just
day
found out
is
about what
no,
we're
yeah, I
talking
know.
about.
100%.
So, but
I sent the courier
I
pigeon,
think,
but
yeah, my visceral response is for sure that I think people's tipping point is after something happens. And I'm sure there's many reasons for it, but kind of the first thing that hit me when I asked myself why, I think denial is a huge part of that. And I think it's because most often people just choose to not want to have to deal with shitty things. Nobody likes problems. We prefer to call it challenges, but people hate that. And so I think people would rather just try to pretend like something's not there for as long as humanly possible. And then when you're finally faced with like, okay, well, I have no choice now but to deal with this. It's like, well, that then becomes the tipping point where it's like, well, now I have to take action because I've been forced to. And do I agree with it? 100% no.
okay. Awesome. Okay, Brad.
Yeah, I think a lot too is the natural um, predisposition of reacting, right? A lot of people will take the path of like, well, I got to react. I'm reactive to this, right? Um, so that's where my head goes to straight away is that very few people have a game plan to respond to anything, right? Violent criminal assault. Very few people have that a game plan to respond to that. It's very reactive. When we find ourselves in a crisis, most people have a reactive standpoint. I think a lot of that too is if we think of even law enforcement, um, people believe that someone else is going to come to their rescue, right? Oh, if I get attacked, like well, that's what we have the police for. It's deferred responsibility in terms of, and that's why I think that's why we get into that action response dichotomy is like it's deferred responsibility. It's not my like to keep the city's streets safe. It's not my responsibility. That's on the police. To keep our country safe, that's not my responsibility. That's on our military. So I think that really makes people not put it on their radar. But it's like, well, what if those people aren't around? Well, now it's your fucking responsibility, and it makes it very reactive. And now it's like that 2 point is very much after the fact, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with what you guys are saying and stuff. So I'm going to throw a few questions out. I mean, I already have my opinion. I know you guys will have your opinions, but I'm almost a bit devil's advocate here. But so why do we think that people are like? How do we get so conditioned? Why are people so reactive? And I think you're right, Brett. Like you talked about deferred responsibility. Do you think then that I mean people have been because Dustin, you talked denial. And that we know the five signs of denial is to rationalize, justify, minimize, make excuses, or flat out refuse. And denial is a coping mechanism. It protects us from unwanted information. So, do you think that people are more prone to being reactive because they've deferred responsibility, and even if there's evidence showing them that they very much need to take responsibility, the denial kicks in. Do we think it's because they've been institutionalized? Do you think it's because, and again, you can't have this conversation and not, I think, look at the impacts of cultural effects, right? Because of what part of the world that we're born in. Like, is this human nature universally all over the world? Well, I think we'd all agree that no, it's not. And why? Because context determines the content. And in many other countries, the context is very fucking different than here. We're very blessed, but at the same time, every blessing also has a curse with it. You know what I mean? There's the yin and the yang of it. So, do we think that the deferred responsibility, the ease at which Western minds use denial, of course, not everybody, but use denial, is because we're institutionalized, or do we think it is because literally a lack of knowing any type of like a lack of skill set, a lack of knowledge, a lack of anything. And I mean, ultimately, it's probably a mix of both. But where do you guys stand on that? And how do you see that when it comes from either just an institutionalized conditioned behavior, maybe like again, the governments and certain agencies want people dependent? Like how did government form in the first place? Was it there to help people? Was it there to enslave people? Was it there to institution? I mean, we can go off on a lot of crazy tangents. I don't want to do that, but I'm just asking, do you think it is because we've been institutionalized and conditioned to be this way, or is it because we simply go, the weight of that responsibility is simply too much because of maybe the context with which we've grown up?
Well, I
Yeah, I
think,
think it's. Go ahead, Brad.
you know what, like when we think about how many people have come to us that are like, well, can I get in trouble for this? You know, and so it's like, I'll use the word self-defense. I know that we don't really like it, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that they're like, well, if I defend myself, I'm gonna get charged. Yeah, you might, but convicted is a different thing. We know that. But I think that the knowledge side of things, not even just the physical game plan, skill sets, mentality to defend against, like, violence, but we have situations where people are scared to do so because they think that there's legal ramifications that they don't understand. And I'm using this as a specific example
Yeah.
because it paralyzes people because they're like, well, I don't want, like, like you hear stuff like in the media. It's like, well, home invader breaks into home, homeowner defends self and property, gets charged because the invaders is pressing charges.
Yeah.
And it's like, in what fucking world do we live in where that's acceptable?
Yeah.
And I think that that puts a little bit of fear in people's minds where it's like, well, I can't, even if I had all the skill sets and weaponry or whatever to do something, I still can't do it without getting in shit.
Yeah.
So I think we get paralyzed a little bit, which puts us on that reactive state. Or it just doesn't even put it on people's radar because they don't believe that they have the capacity to do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to speak on that too, because I know that that's an excellent point, and it's a very, very true point. To be fair, of course, that has happened. And we know, you qualified this earlier, Brad, many, many times homeowners, let's say the innocent people, have been charged. There is a big showing of like
Yes.
a display by certain elements that, because there are people that obviously want to limit or reduce or take away our freedoms and our rights to defend and protect ourselves and property. There's people out there that would like that. There are also a counterforce where they are fighting tooth and nail to maintain our rights to defend ourselves. So yes, and like you said, being charged and being convicted are two different things. It's still a hell of a process to have to go through. We shouldn't have all that type of stuff. But your main point of that is why do we have this? Most people waiting until almost it's basically essentially too late to do anything. And you're right, that almost institutionalized fear that you're just like, I'm going to get in fucking trouble for anything that I do, right? Even if, like you said, I have the skill sets.
Well, even look at the paradigms that we have. Like, we talked about this on a podcast a long time ago. It's like, well, you're in school, there's a fight, who threw the first punch?
Yeah.
Or you got to wait for someone to physically assault you before you could do any action to defend your life.
Yeah.
And it's because it's the lack of education on what you actually can and cannot do.
Yeah.
But it's like we all grew up with those paradigms.
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Dustin, you had some thoughts. I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, just you asked, do we think it's partly because of conditioning? And I do think 100% that's a big part of it. And maybe this is a slightly different way than what you meant, but I think so many people are not willing to act because they haven't had to. It comes back to that quotable, like, soft times make soft men. Well, yeah, and again, you mentioned different societies. Is it different elsewhere? 100%. But if you look at our society that we're all living in and grew up in, for the most part, like, we have not had to defend ourselves on a daily basis for our entire lives. But there's certainly places in the world where people feel the exact opposite. In other countries, like, if people don't feel safe in their own environment, like, they're a hell of a lot more willing than the average person here to take matters into their own hands as far as their own personal protection, family protection, that kind of thing. So I think our society has been very much conditioned to not take action because they get away with it and have gotten away with it for a very long time.
Yeah.
And now I think we're starting to see that, like, yeah, maybe the clock's running out a little bit. Maybe people's numbers are coming up a little bit quicker than they ever would have expected as far as being faced with violence.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think that, like, if I just kind of, similar question, but let's reframe it to what is it then about, what is it about the individuals that then their tipping point is before stuff starts, like before it happens. Like I referenced at the beginning, there's a lot of men, the majority of men that are coming to me. The biggest commonality is, again, they're seeing like the way the world's going. Like, something's brewing. Like, and they're talking in many different areas. You know, you can reference problems with immigration, problems within the justice system, and our bail reform, and just a breakdown of the society or family, the family units, and drug addictions, and like, I mean, government issues, and like, there's just so many places that when they look around, they go, shit's on fire, and when shit's on fire, things break down. You know what I mean? Stuff gets destroyed, and then it's like, then what happens? So, I mean, I think overtly, just the easy answer is, well, they're seeing shit for what it is. They're looking at what's going on and going, the system is broken. Like, things are on fire. I can see it. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and I can fucking see the flames. But what do you think it is about these types of individuals? Like, I believe there's more to it than just they see the obvious writing on the wall. Because why can they see it, and why can't others? And again, we already mentioned why we think they can't. Institutionalized, conditioned, they have never had to, all those things. But what do you think it is beyond the obvious for men that really step into getting the skills, mindset, knowledge, the prep stuff? And again, I don't care if I use the word prepper, but most people think of it as they have an image of what a prepper is, which that is rapidly changing in today's day and age. It's not the taboo word that it was even 7 to 10 years ago. People looked at preppers as nutcases, right? But if you got a guy that's coming in and learning to protect, learning to use and master the tool of violence, he is in many ways a prepper. It is part of his preparation to protect himself and family if and when crisis, whether that's natural, mechanical, or human, happens, right? So what else do you think about these guys that are proactive?
I think that a lot of it comes down to ownership, which we have talked a lot before. And what I mean by that is owning the problem, seeing the event horizon, and seeing that, hey, listen, this is a problem, and this very well could and is my problem, And I wrote one thing down, and I hopefully I got it right, because it's something that it's a saying that we've talked about before, but I think it comes down with that plus identity. And I wrote down, if not now, then when? And if not me, then who? Right? Like like if we like violent, like we've all been in the realm of violence for decades, right? Like this resonates with me like greatly. If not now, then when? When am I gonna take that action to prepare for what's in front of me or what's to come? And then if not me, then who?
Yeah.
Right. I think did I get the quote right?
Yep,
Is
100%,
that
yep. 100%. Yep.
So, I think a lot that resonates with, I think, on an identity level, because when you boil it down, it's like no one's coming to fucking save you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to interrupt for a second because we got a comment from Daryl, and I appreciate the comment, my friend. But the comment is buy a gun, and I know that it's. I'm sure that was meant with like a, that's buy a gun, and the other side of it is also, I guess my question for that is like, so what?
Yeah.
You got a gun, so what? I got guns. Everyone's got guns, so what? A gun is a tool. You know what I mean? It's one thing, and to me this almost exasperates the problem, in the sense that like a man's tipping point of saying you got a fight coming, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about this is that many people think that they have a plan, no matter how shitty their plan is, no matter how underdeveloped their plan is, no matter how flawed their plan is, they accept anything and go, I have a plan. And so this is my plan. And yet, again, I deal with people every single day that are, preparing, weaponizing, equipping, all this type of stuff. And by a landslide majority, what people do is collect boulders. They collect pieces. I've got guns, I've got electric bikes, I've got stored fuel, I've got caches, I got go bags, I got this. I hear the litany of, I hear the list that people have. And yet they have no system to plug any of those tools into. They have no fundamental, strategies, tactics, tools It is eclectic list of things, and those things are important. But at the end of the day, they're just things. And if you can, one of our very simple concept, natural, designed, and expedient. There's natural tools, there's design tools, and there's expedient tools. And all of three of those things none have a greater level of importance or functionality. All three of those things are one objective, whatever the strategy, whatever the objective is to design. You can either do it naturally, you can use the aid of designed, or you can use the aid of expedient tools, and you can get the job done. Yet the focus always seems to go to the tool, and there's people literally will argue over what is better. And it's like, why are we wasting this time? There is no better. There is no superior tool all the time. There is only the tool. The tool becomes superior for that moment. The context determines the content. And most people have never invested in the training development of the most important tool, weapon, which is the human mind, which is actually developing frameworks for how things work as an integrated system, the human weapon system. And then natural design and expedient can integrate into it. I met a guy, I have a guy that's trained me just the last couple of days, and he was right up saying, I have a plan, and the plan has worked for me in the past in a couple of different situations, but he freely, willingly acknowledges his plan has major flaws, major vulnerabilities, but he can't break free from just, this is what I'm going to do. And so there's a struggle to say, well, now what you're doing, it's like, I got a knife, but the thing's old and rusty and fucking, the point's all rounded and the edge is all dulled. And it's like, what you need to do now is you need to put a nice edge on that. You need to polish that thing. You need to develop it. But it's like, many people are it's like being in the ocean and they're hanging off a fucking log that's waterlogged and barely keeping them afloat. But the flotation device is 2 feet away from them, but they can't reach out to grab it. They can't upgrade. Do you get what I mean? Because, and this is part of where I'd like to take the conversation. People don't want to upgrade potentially the skill sets because of the fear of vulnerability, right? If you have a plan, but the plan, no matter how flawed the plan is or how basic or simple the plan is or how easy it would be for somebody to destroy your objectives within that plan, whatever it is, it's a plan. It's something, and they're familiar with it, and the willingness to be vulnerable, because growth is vulnerability. Before strength comes, weakness comes, right? Before any type of positive comes, the negative comes. Anything in the world, before it goes up, it has to go down. It's immutable concept, and so it's the same thing with skill sets and training, and this whole process. If you've got a fight coming. And again, what I hear people talking about, many people are rightfully so, I believe, genuinely concerned, if not afraid, and I believe they have every right to be, that the world, something very catastrophic is, very possible.
Looming?
And what's that?
Looming?
Yeah. If you the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior, let's go back in the history of the world. This is not new, but it's new to our time. And if people are seeing that, and again, we all hope we're wrong, but if people are seeing that and that does come to fruition, like in this moment right now, if that's true, then your plan needs to be deeper than ammunition and a firearm. Needs to be deeper than I sleep with a machete under my bed or a baseball bat behind my door. Those are not plans. Those are just tools. And the tool is picked up by a human system. And that human system, untrained and unrestrained, is untrained and unrestrained. And if you're talking about a situation, you're talking about a crisis, a catastrophic crisis. Violence is a catastrophic crisis. Most people are hardwired that when I say crisis or you say confrontation, you say violence, their brain is wired, their blueprint is confrontation. You're an asshole. You got a problem? I don't got a problem. You got a fucking problem? They're literally Their biggest blueprint that they can possibly fathom is a couple frat boys looking for a fight, out drunk, or walking in the inner city and going, look at these, like some homeless people that are so strung out and weigh about 100 pounds, and they are fucking dangerous, but literally, they're not the threat that you need to be. Like, they are a threat. They are a low level threat. You could easily dispense those guys. No fucking need of a gun. If you need a gun to handle those guys, you got a lot more problems, because those guys are a fucking joke. They're dangerous, but they're a fucking joke. You know what I mean? It's like they're, I don't. If people understood the type of criminal that was being put out on our streets, that are walking our city streets right now, and what they've done, if you could see their criminal records and understand who these people are, the offenses they committed, and understand they're walking around, people wouldn't want to leave their fucking houses. Because this is not some junkies on Skid Row. This is a very, very different tier of threat. And the education of a weaponized man is a process to prepare for the worst case scenarios. You know what I mean? It's to prepare individuals for, the highest levels of crisis when it comes to human crisis, interpersonal human aggression, by organized individuals that, understand and have mastered the tool of violence and have no hesitation when it comes to using it. This is the problem. You train for that, and you can throttle down for anything else you want, anything else that you need. But if you don't train for that, then, so again, even the title of this episode, you've got a fight coming. And you know how much I hate the word fight, because society has, again, pre-programmed everybody to go, oh, fight. Yeah, some guy talking shit. Some fucking crackhead tried to break into my house. Well, that's not what I'm talking about, but okay. Some crackhead breaks into your house. Like, there's guys in a neighborhood that, again, yeah, anybody could break into your house at any time for whatever reason. And it can be dangerous and it can be deadly. But people don't understand. There's these guys that get caught. There's guys that case neighborhoods for weeks and months at a time, writing down the comings and goings and who lives in the house, and writing down license plate and vehicles and connected to who's there, and going and doing research on registration and finding out who lives there, and doing research and finding out net worth that these guys make, where they work, that follow these guys, build dossier on these people. And these are people that are just looking to break into homes. They're not necessarily looking to abduct anybody or hurt anybody. That's how much information, that's how much research, that's how much time and effort they put into that craft. Because when they take your house down, they're going to fucking empty the whole fucking thing. They're going to find, that they're skilled. Now imagine somebody who uses that and does that when it comes to violence. There's levels to this, right? So when you got a fight coming, again, what's the tipping point? If you're thinking in terms of scenario A, where you're just worried about some riding the LRT, and again, that can be deadly. But you're worried about some guy, some junkie that gets on and is all skidded out. That's not a. If you're trained, that's not a serious problem. It's just not like fighters get in the ring, and there's different degrees of fights. You start your fight career off and you fight guys that have no experience like you, blah, 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 you build up. There's a point in time in your career when you got to step in the ring or the cage with some serious fucking individuals. I mean, guys that are proven, guys that have fought people. There's different types of fights, but that's what they train for. From day one, they train to get in with the very best in the world. That's what I love about anybody that is any chosen industry that is literally looking to move to the elite level. It is not easy, and you have to consistently and constantly fucking test yourself. And so I'll throw a couple things out because it'll revert back to a question for you guys. But one of my things is, listen, how do we, first is rationalization and acceptance. But how do you start preparing? What are some of the things that we can share with people that I think, or that we think would help them get a different perspective and a different handle on this? And one of the things, if I just do an analogy, because we love our analogies around here, but if you're going to do a survival course, right? If you're like, I want to go do a survival course, get some survival skills. Most people are obviously thinking, out in nature, out in the woods, that kind of thing. Well, one of the first things you have to do is you actually have to fucking remove yourself from the comfort of your life. You actually have to get the fuck out there. You find a guide, you find a certified trainer, you find someone that has the skill sets that you want, that has the experience, And then you get the fuck off your ass, you get off your lazy boy, you get away from the comfort of your home, the safety and security of your home, and you get the fuck out there. And you spend time out there and you do it hard. Meaning you take away the comforts. The concept is you burn the fucking boats. You want to figure out survival skills, you have to put yourself in a position where you actually need to survive. Now, I'm not saying you put yourself into imminent danger, but if you're doing a survival course and you're doing it with comfort and zero risk of anything, you're just doing an intellectual exercise. Now, if you're a beginner, you have to start with the appropriate courses. You're probably not ready to go on a 10-day, 15-day, 30-day survival expedition. But if you're also taking and saying, I'm learning survival skills, and your end goal is not to partake in a 30-day, 60-day, 20-day survival course where you are literally put to the fucking test, then that training is really just an intellectual exercise. Intellectual exercises can be powerful. They can be very helpful. But let's not kid yourself. You have recreational skill sets because you have recreational motivation. The individuals that are going to live and die by skill sets, that are genuinely believe they're going to need these things to save their lives, the lives of their family and community, they're not recreational. And I'll throw this out, then I'll want you guys to comment. Fear and pressure. You know what makes the best fighters and the best competitors in any industry? The ones that are the most afraid. The most afraid to fucking fail. The ones that feel the most pressure. They don't want to show up for a fucking competition, right? They don't want to show up and be embarrassed. They don't want to show up and have people looking at them and go, what the fuck were you doing? That fear, like you take a competitor and you take a guy that's a fucking white belt in something, a blue belt in something, but that motherfucker makes a decision to compete and he knows in 6 weeks or in 6 months, he's going to this tournament. And then, 6 months later, he's going again. And 3 months later, he's going again. And he's got this guy and he's going to have to face this guy and this guy. He's terrified. He's terrified of looking like a fucking idiot. He's terrified of failing, right? He doesn't want to be hurt, injured, whatever it is. So guess what he does? He shows up at the gym 6 days, 7 days a week. Like even if he can't get to the gym, he'll work a fucking 10-hour, 12-hour shift and he'll go downstairs in his basement and he'll work out for the hour. He'll put the training in and he'll do it 6, 7 days a week. A recreational hobbyist won't do that because they don't have the fear. They don't have the pressure. It's all an intellectual exercise in their mind. And I'm not saying, like, again, get the context of what we're talking about. I genuinely believe every single person that comes to me is going to be in a situation, they're going to find their righteous fight. They're going to have their righteous moment. They will face it, them or their family. And the skill sets, mindset, and knowledge that they possess is the difference between them living and people dying. I believe that with 100% of my being. To think any other way on my part as what I do for a living would be negligent. In any way, shape, or form, to even talk to a guy for 60 seconds and the conversation is recreational is disgusting. It's, you know what I mean? Like, how would you open up the paper the next day? Now, people die. That's the reality of combat and violence. But to look myself in the mirror, I need to know that I did everything I could do. No filler, no recreational time, no bullshit. I did the best that I could fucking do with the time that we had, and you know what I mean? And we were both putting in the work that we could put in. Warriors die. I've accepted this. I don't care how long you do this. I can step outside today and not make it home. That's violence. Yeah, that's violence. Right? So, I don't know. Anything that you guys on that whole idea of how we test ourselves and how we make this real?
Well, like you mentioned and asked about, fear and pressure. And I think anybody talking about violence who can't put themselves in a position to feel, like truly feel, like, yes, I would 100% be afraid. There would be so much pressure. Like, if you don't feel that, then I would question how well you even understand the problem to begin with. Yeah. Like, how intimately do you really understand what violence is, what it looks like, what it would feel like? Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's a huge part of it. And I can kind of tie that back to earlier in the podcast when you asked what allows people to kind of have their tipping point occur before it's too late or before something happens. And I think that too comes back to understanding the problem. I think that's what allows them to act first, because they're truly able to see what the problem is that they're facing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, how do you convince somebody to train for violence the right way when they don't understand what violence is?
Yeah.
Like, as you said, it's just an intellectual exercise at that point. So to me, so much of it just always keeps coming back to, like, you have to understand the problem. The deeper and more intimate you understand the problem, then the quicker you can own the solution.
Yeah, 100%. Well, again, I'll tell you, the guys that are coming to me, like, there's not a single one of them that wouldn't admit they're afraid. But what are they afraid of? They're afraid of what's coming. and they don't know what's coming. They don't have a crystal ball, but they're afraid of like what they're looking forward and seeing, where the state of the world and the way things are going. The things that keep popping up in their event horizon, none of it is good, right? None of it is good. Now, they all hope that it doesn't come to that. But if it does come to that, they're like, I need to know. I need to have as many skill sets. I need to like, you know what I mean? See, men aren't motivated by going, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't know this thing. I better figure that out. That's not really what motivates men, right? Because we're just men just fix shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like you everyone knows what I'm talking about when you go, well, I didn't have the right parts, but I jury rigged it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any of the skill sets, but I fucking YouTubed this shit, or I just fucking sat there for 4 days until I figured something out to make it work. It's probably not right. Maybe it's not even that safe, but it fucking works. You know what I mean? Like, we solve problems. That's what we do. So men aren't motivated by going, I don't know. But what they are motivated by is when they look and they see a problem significant enough, the impact is significant enough to them and their families, they feel a sense of responsibility. I think men are motivated by the fear of regret. Right? I've said this before, not that long ago on a podcast, but the fear of regret. Because if you have an inkling, sorry, go ahead, Dustin.
No, all I was going to say was just, I think like how many men with families are far more afraid of failing their family than they are of being hurt, killed themselves. Like what
100%.
What husband, father wouldn't put their life on the line, give their life up for their family? Like every single one of them.
Yeah. Well, to the number, they're all men with families. They're all family men that are coming to me, which is exactly that's what I train. Men that are family men, right? Because they're motivated. They have a higher sense of purpose, and it is regret. Like, it is the fear of regret that is driving them to be like, I will not look back. I will not wait till after or even during, and sit there going, I don't have a fucking clue. Do you know what I mean? So this again is them going, I'm going to fix this fucking problem. I don't care what it is. I will learn. I will, you know what I mean? And they're like sponges, right? Because violence and training for violence and understanding kill chains and all these different things is very fucking different. This is not a martial art, right? This is survival training, right? Urban survival training. I mean, it's interpersonal human aggression survival training. So, so for me, it's like, let's finish the analogy maybe a little bit here, because I said, like, if you want those survival skills, you got to actually, the end goal has got to be to get out there and be like, I'm going to take the courses, get the knowledge, get the training, and then I'm going to test myself, right? You got to get out there and you got to actually do it. Because the time to learn is not when you have to. The time to learn is before you ever have to, right? The whole idea of creating pre-combat veterans, right? So the goal is, well, how do you do that when it comes to violence? Because what do you want me to do? Like, you come in there and, go get in violent altercations and fights and all stuff? No, of course not. But one of the things you do and how you test yourself again is the training in and of itself is constantly putting you to the test. Like, I would say that even tonight's podcast, and we do this on many of our podcasts, the podcasts are often, they have an air of a confrontational, it depends how you look at it, but the hard realities is the conversation. That's what we call our conversations, right? The hard realities. You have to force people to really confront the true nature of something like violence in many different ways. We come at it from a lot of different ways. So it is not just about the fact that you can do scenario training like kill house training and all that type of stuff, and you build up to that. Yes, those are ways to physically inoculate and pressure test your skill sets and all that type of stuff. But the mental work is really quite unrelenting. The paradigm work, the challenging of blueprints and beliefs starts from the second you come in, and it doesn't stop. It literally is unrelenting. It is the most taxing part of the entire weaponization process, in my opinion. You guys can agree or disagree if you want, that's fine. But in my opinion, that is the real process. I mean, every day, I'm just working with people every single day. And from the second they walk in, I'm unrelenting with it. Because I can see and identify limiting blueprints. I can see old patterns of thinking and behaving that don't align with what violence is. I can see people when they naturally, mentally, like psychologically, physically, emotionally, want to slide into an area of comfort. right? Where they want to soften everything. They want to be like, well, I have this time. I don't need to operate with this sense of urgency. And I simply don't allow that. Because again, it's like we're not sport training at all. But let's use the analogy. You've got to train like you're a fucking fighter. Like warriors train like warriors, fighters train like fighters. How they parallel, one of the ways, is that the fighter's going to get in the fucking ring. It's happening. You know, you sign the contract, you're taking a fight. You got, whether you got 6 weeks, a week, 2 months, whatever it is, you set up a fucking fight camp. And you don't fuck around with it. Like, you get to business, you get to fucking work. Because on the night, when that night comes and when you step into that octagon or you step in that ring or that cage, whatever your sport is, when you step on that mat, everybody else that's watching you can tell whether or not you've put the work in. There's no fucking hiding it. And it's the same process. You know, we move people through the foundation that we build for people is called the Weaponized 16 because there's 64 total lessons in all 4 levels of the weaponization process that take you from 0 to tactical. But none of that matters. It's the first 16. That's 0 to formidable. That's the foundational work. And it has to be done in the most expedient manner possible. So taking somebody from a 0 start point and in 16 1-hour intensive lessons, so in 16 hours, you have to build a foundation. Well, you can walk in and walk in on hour 1, walk in on hour 8, and walk in on hour 16. And you can tell who's put the fucking work in. You can tell whether this process works or doesn't work. But you can't fuck around with that shit. And you can't have people that are wanting to hide from something. You know what I mean? That don't want to do the work. Right? So, you know, again, it's to me this episode I really wanted to focus in on if you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that you had a fight coming. Then what are you doing? What is the prep work? Are you doing the prep work? Are you ready for it? And if you are ready for it, what type of fight are you ready for? Do you even know what fight's coming your way? Because, and again, we're actually going to do an episode on the podcast where I'd like to have one of our clients, Costa, come on with us again. Because, he exists in the safety survival realm, very educated in that department. And I'd like to have a conversation with him because the whole idea of prepping and preppers and what they're doing is maybe more relevant today than in the last number of years for sure. So I'd like him to talk more on that part of it. But like I said, this is a part of that prepping. And if you got the fight coming, what are you prepping for? Because my point with that was that even hardcore preppers will say, like, you do have to kind of choose. You have to kind of narrow your focus, especially in the beginning, to go, what am I preparing for? Am I preparing for a natural disaster? Am I preparing for the collapse of infrastructure, economical collapse, food chains, like, whatever, maybe it's a combination, but what are you preparing for? And you start to develop your kit based off that, your knowledge, your skill sets, your kit, all that type of stuff. So when it comes to violence and training, again, if the fight's coming, what type of fight do you think's coming? And that'll say a lot because, again, context determines content. So most people haven't spent the time on the context. They just one-dimensionally think, well, it's a fight. I got to know how to fight. I should know how to, throw punches. And, like I said, we had a guy contact me the other day, and that was his email. He saw my ad, and my ad is very much a call to action. Men that see the potentiality of what's coming. And there's going to be, I believe, a real fucking world need to be able to protect yourself, your family, your property, all of it. And not just from, cracked out winos. Something far more sinister than that, far bigger than that. And the men that are responding, his comments and his response was, listen, I'm 45, I'm, whatever, I got a bad shoulder, but I can still throw a punch. Like, he wasn't talking about in a braggadocious way. He wasn't talking about wanting to get in the ring and fight. He was saying, if it comes to protecting my freedoms and my family's freedoms, I'm willing to do what it takes. But it's so interesting because the limitations was like, if that's all you can do is throw a punch, you're really of very little value to anybody. But you get the spirit with which he said it is what I know I can work with. But we have a real need to weaponize people beyond the ability to throw a punch or take a punch or armbar. You know what I mean? Like a valuable skill sets in the right context, but we're talking about a different context, right? The game we're worried about is happening on a different level. So, anyways, I don't know, guys. Kind of anything else that you guys feel like we could add to this conversation for people?
I think one thing I was holding on to a little bit was, and I know it's kind of like a little bit of the essence of what we've been talking about, but it's software, not hardware. You know, professionals always talk about software, amateurs talk about hardware, and you even like the comment about, well, buy a gun. And I liked what you said, because you're like, well, what good is that?
Yeah.
What system is that operating within? You know, and it made me go back to deferred responsibility. Well, I don't need to upgrade my software. Use the word upgrade. I don't need to upgrade my software because I got a gun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, again, it's deferring that responsibility to the firearm now, not even to like the usability and the functionality of like, how do you operate that tool, and what does that tool, how does that fit into your overall operation system? You ain't going to work with it, you know. Like how, like, so again, it's you know, professionals always talk software, amateurs talk hardware, and it's like, what is your survival system for whatever, you know, whatever you are preparing for.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I know we're not going to go down this rabbit hole, but it's that old analogy again, right? Like there's the context of a situation where a smoke grenade is more valuable than a handgun, and people are like, "What are you talking about? What world is a smoke grenade more valuable than a handgun?" It's not a world; it's a context. But if you can't understand that, if you can't put that puzzle together, then you know what I mean. Like that's how much work is ahead of you. You're standing in shallow waters when you need to get into the deeper waters, right? Like a concept of running the ladder. Gun's a powerful tool, but that's it. It's a tool. If the long gun is appropriate, great. But if you're close quarter or hand to hand, like, you know, run the ladder. Like a smoke grenade could be more valuable than a firearm. Powerful tools, context determines the content, right? The degree to which you can use any tool is the degree to which you've weaponized your mindset, your understanding, your attributes, all that type of stuff, right? So personal protection, survivability is not one dimensional. Therefore, one tool cannot solve all problems. And again, just to be clear, you guys enjoy guns? You guys like understand the power of a gun? Yes. Do you understand the power of weapon knives and like all? Yes. Like all of it, 100%. Yeah, fuck yeah. That's why it's natural, designed, and expedient. You know what I mean? The beauty is you can use it all. Just understand, have a bigger strategy. It's got to plug into something. You know what I mean? It's just a tool that plugs into a bigger system. So hopefully that's what we can shed some light on.
I gotta throw out an oldie but a goodie, just like for you guys, because I like, we've been doing this a long time, and I remember, God, I don't know if it was probably in the first few months of starting to train with you, Greg.
Wow, you're going.
And I remember
way
you
back.
asking the whole class, "What's that?"
I said you're going way back.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, he said you
but
say
like
class,
literally,
so that's a long time ago.
I remember you asking the whole class at the time, like, you know, if you're getting in a like a fight, whatever, an assault, like, would you rather a hand grenade or a Swiss Army knife? You know, and everybody's like, hand grenade. You're like, oh no, I didn't tell you though. Like, you're gonna get attacked in an elevator, and like that always just stuck for me, because it was just such a simple, undeniable, like, context determines content. It's like you just never forget that, and that just ties into the whole gun thing.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to beat it to death. You've covered it, but it's like, for me, that was always just such a great example of that whole concept.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I think if I have anything else to add to this is here's what's interesting. There's 2 points. One will be a setup for a future podcast that I mentioned with Costa potentially here, but I'd say this. When it comes to violence, like this, the survival course, you could say, I'm going to take this course. They're going to take me out in the bush, and I'm going to have to survive. So they're building this necessity. If you are going to the right place and you're getting professional grade training, you're going to be confronted. Like, you're going to be forced to face a lot of hard realities about violence. You're going to be forced to do a lot of work in your core beliefs, your understanding, your blueprints, all this type of stuff, as well as there's going to be the physical challenge where you're outgunned, outmanned. You know, you're not going to be able to equate anything you do to this simple one-on-one punching, kicking bullshit. It's not violence. But I would say ask yourself the hard questions. You know, you've got a fight coming. What's this look like? You know, what does it look like? if there is a breakdown in society, a breakdown in infrastructure, whatever it is, there's a saying within the prepper community that is 72 hours to animal, meaning that people within 72 hours, they can survive 72 hours. They can go hungry, they can go thirsty, they can survive 72 hours. But at the 72-hour mark, thereabout, people go animalistic. That's when you're really going to see. So if something happens, 72 hours, and people are going to start to fucking flip. Right? You know what I mean? Like, look at COVID, look at toilet paper. People went crazy. People are fighting over fucking toilet paper, which wasn't even, what the fuck point was that? But the point is, 72 hours, people go to animal. So imagine something happening. Now, again, I'm not saying this is all like a natural or a mechanical crisis, which could be the breakdown of government infrastructure, whatever it is, but just in a human crisis, you know what I mean? If shit's happening, people go animalistic. You have no idea where you're running into somebody at. You got these people that it's been 72 hours of crisis in their life, and that's when you happen to encounter them. Now you're fucking dealing with an animal. It's, it's just so you have to ask yourself these hard questions. What is potentially, what is probable, what is coming? And then don't shy away from these questions. Ask yourself the questions, and then that question will lead to the next question, and to the next question, and the next question. And don't stop asking those questions until you uncover the truth. And I said, I specifically phrased it that way. Don't stop asking yourself the really hard fucking questions until you uncover the truth. I didn't say until you come up with the answer. Because most of us will answer based off our current paradigms, our current way of thinking, our current bias, our current perception. What you have to do, one of the biggest things when it comes to preparing for violence, is you have to ask yourself questions that you probably already know, you don't have the answer for. And then you have to push deeper and say, what are the consequences of me having a very inadequate plan or too myopic of a plan or not having the right strategies, training, whatever it is, tools, blah, 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 blah. And you got to keep fucking pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And you're going to ask yourself some very uncomfortable, very hard questions. And you're going to uncover some very hard, very scary truths. And when you do that, as scary as that is, and as hard as that is to step outside of your own fucking bias and see it for what it really is and acknowledge that shit, that becomes you owning the problem. Because I'll revert it back to this. Fear and pressure makes the best warriors. They're motivated by something, but when you know you're going to war, when you know that you are going to be in the environment where this shit is not, being an intellectual exercise will get you fucking killed. Or worse yet, it'll get your family fucking killed. Then you train with a different passion, and I don't give a fuck what your attributes are, what your age level is, because you don't have to fight. What you need to do is fucking win. That's what you need to do. And winning can just be surviving, or winning sometimes means you gotta destroy to survive. But it's got nothing to do with fucking fighting, right? So ask yourself those hard questions. Don't stop until you uncover these truths. And then when you figure out what those are, then start preparing yourself, because there's always a fight coming. There's always a fight coming. It's just a matter of when, right? And then I'll say the last thing, because the people we train are men. They're family men. If we're blessed enough at 52 years old, if I'm blessed enough that I'm 92 years old or 102 years old and dying in my, lying in my deathbed, and, the big righteous fight doesn't come. I have 2 daughters. They got a whole lot of life left after I'm gone. And so maybe the fight doesn't find me, right? Not the full out righteous. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does, but they're still here and they'll have kids. And it's like the last thing I want to do is leave a generation of victims behind. Right? So there is a responsibility and an obligation. They can only ascend to the level that I set them up for. And so if I'm preparing them for, like you said, soft times make for soft people, I believe we're in a very weird mix right now of both soft and hardening times. Things are changing. So the best thing that you can do is prepare them for what's coming, which is, I think everyone could agree, much harder times. Maybe they're not the hardest times yet, but we can go from soft to hard times in a fucking blink of an eye. So, again, I think just You've got a fight coming. You can either acknowledge that or you can't. And if you can't, that's fine. You can seek life elsewhere. That's okay. But if you ask yourself that question honestly, then what's your tipping point? You're going to start doing stuff before, you're going to wait till it's happening, or you're going to wait till after. Good news is right now we are on the front end of it. We have even though shit is happening, it is before. We are not there yet. And maybe times, maybe things divert a bit, whatever, that's great. But now is the time. For sure now is the time. All right, any final thoughts, guys, on this one?
For me,
Yeah, I
I
would
think,
just echo your. Sorry,
go
I'll
ahead.
just echo your comment on legacy, Greg. Because that's not something we talk a ton about on the podcast. We've touched on it. Because yeah, like obviously all three of us feel the same way. We all want training to be in our kids' lives, and to a certain degree anyway. And I think it's something that a responsibility that a lot of people maybe just haven't thought about. It's always legacy is always about finances. People have nest eggs and life insurance policies and whatever else, value in their homes and passing on their estate and all that stuff, but it's always financial. And I just think it's a really, really great point to bring up because it is important to all of us that train. But yeah, something that's not always talked about. So I think it's a very powerful part of legacy to pass on is the ability to protect yourself, your family, other innocent people for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, just the question that we always ask a lot when we're developing our mindset, and it's used usually in a different context. But the question is, what is this costing me? And I think for the topic that we covered tonight is like, well, what is it costing me not knowing? What is it costing me not preparing? Do you know what I mean? And so taking that question that we use so often in the self-development side of things of what we do and flipping it to be like, oh, for the lack of, what is it costing me for not knowing how to defend and protect my family? Most people will be like, well, it's not costing me anything right now. Yeah, but then, what may it cost you, right?
100%. 100%. Okay, I think we'll end it here for tonight, guys. Again, as always, I appreciate you guys, your expertise, your knowledge, your time, your energy, and yeah, I just hope there's value in it for people for asking themselves this question and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to throw up Joey's wrote the quote here. I had to quickly punch it in to translate it, but si vis pacem para bellum, which is, of course, if you want peace, prepare for war. So, beautiful quote. I think a fitting way to end this podcast, and we'll just leave it at that. So, all right, everybody, listen, I genuinely want to thank everybody for watching, listening, supporting us. I want everyone to please stay safe, stay weaponized, so that we can chat again another day. Take care, everybody.